Welcome to the Dashboard Effect podcast. I'm Brick Thompson.
And I'm Landon Oaks.
Landon, we wanted to talk today about a topic we've covered over the years, once or twice, but just wanted to come back to it. It seems to come up a lot with how do you make sure not to embark on a data project in your company and fail? And a lot of times the failure is caused by a boil the ocean approach to a data project, wanting to get everything just right and pulling everything together and building all the data models and having all the measures and KPIs perfectly defined and developed before you launch. Yeah, you want to get there eventually, but if you start with that and it takes you, in the old days it would take 18 months, 24 months, and people would do that as a big waterfall project, but there's a way better approach now.
Yeah, I would agree. At the end of the day, you're sinking a ton of capital into this thing over those, 18 months or so. And the worst case scenario, nobody uses these reports.
Yeah. So really you want to try to figure out how do you start on your data journey and deliver fast ROI for the company. And really the best way to do that is to start very narrow, even as narrow as one small area that you're going to produce some reports. You're going to pull the data together from whatever systems you need to produce that report. Maybe it's only 1 or 2 or 3 pages of different tabs on the report, and maybe there's only 4 or 5, maybe a half dozen visualizations on those pages, but it's answering some key question for your company. And if you can do that quickly, like we try to get that done in the first 4 to 6 weeks of engaging with a client, so that the users can start to see the benefit and the executives and stakeholders can start to see the ROI. That's the way you do it. That's the way you avoid having sort of a failed project. We talk to customers who engage with a company or buy a big license to a BI system, and they're 9 months in and haven't seen anything yet. Those are the ones that are going to die on the vine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've definitely seen several of those where it's just so much in there. The downside too is it adds a lot of complexity too. So
right.
Changing it now becomes a major chore. And that at the end of the day, if nobody's using it, you have to change it. But
you do.
Now you've got a lot more to think about when you do.
And also, you don't know, you might think you know exactly what you want in your BI system when you start, but you don't really until you start seeing data and start seeing reports. And so we advocate really trying to dig into a very high value area that you can very quickly get some reporting in front of people, and then light bulbs will start going off. And from there, you can branch out and start doing more and more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I've thought about what are the questions that I'd like to ask a client to try to get to what is that one key area. And one of them sounds kind of funny, but one question you can start with is, what do you and your executive team argue about in terms of data when you're in a meeting? People come in with different spreadsheets and they can't decide who's right about their view on a certain thing. That can be a good place to start, because that's usually something that's important to the business. So you can actually just sort of ask the question, what's leading to operational friction or managerial friction as a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets people thinking about the right things, and it can be a tough conversation to decide what the right approach is, but it's a conversation that needs to happen at the end of the day if you really want to solve the problem.
Yeah, so it might be areas like on-time delivery or utilization of resources. I've seen teams have varying opinions on how well their field resources are being utilized, things like that. First time fix rate, those types of things. If you can find something that's really important to the business that people aren't having clarity on, or data is siloed, or people are bringing different versions of the truth, that is often a good place to start.
Yeah, it forces you to prioritize, which is always a good thing.
Yeah. So from there, I sort of go to a second question. So in that area, what one question, if you could answer it, if the managerial team could answer it quickly, brings the most value to the table? And if you can find a single question, ideally you'd have one perfect metric or KPI. It's usually not that. It's usually a question that is going to be around an area, and maybe there's a measure or two, but then you're going to need to dig in a little bit more to be able to answer it. If you can find that tight little area, though, that's usually a great place to start.
Yeah. Focusing on your financials, right? You made a great point earlier with these companies that utilization means a lot to their bottom line. And if you're looking at it like, what would that do to my financials ongoing? It's a great place to start.
Yeah. Then I think the next thing you have to do is for the team, the stakeholders that are part of this initial push into BI and data, or maybe it's a re-push. Every company has their spreadsheets and reports and so on, but maybe you're trying to really roll something out that's more unified, is set the right expectations. So for that first project, you're really trying to get to something useful with ROI in the first 30 days, the first 45 days. If your data is already in a data lakehouse, it probably is a matter of 2 to 4 weeks, something like that. If it's not, you may have some data work to do, but again, try to pick sources that you can quickly load into a lakehouse in a week, something like that, or even less. But set an expectation that with the team, we're not trying to boil the ocean here. We're not trying to build the absolute perfect end-to-end, has everything in it solution. We're trying to deliver ROI in an area and start proving the concept and getting people to adopt, and then figure out where to go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the cool things we've seen personally at several clients is once you get that first thing out there, first of all, the people that report is built for, they become a champion of what you're trying to do, right? But on top of that, they start to show others, like word spreads, right? They'll see what they're looking at, and then now the others in the company are like, oh, what could I have that would also do this for me?
Exactly. Yeah, sort of the concept of the flywheel. You want to get a flywheel going. So while you're not looking for perfection in that first effort, you are looking for clarity and accuracy. You're sort of ending that argument. There probably isn't actually a heated argument going on, but if there's some disagreement in that first question I gave, if you can end that disagreement and people, are now agreeing, okay, we have clarity here, we have accuracy, and we can make decisions faster, they're actually going to move the needle, then you get into that sort of spinning the flywheel. And we've seen it over and over. As you get sort of the momentum, you get that flywheel going, all of a sudden people understand sort of how to approach this. It's not just come up with a laundry list of reports, but really what are the visualizations, the reports, the KPIs, the measures that are going to allow us to make a decision today or this week that is going to have the biggest impact on our profitability or our revenue this quarter, and really start digging in. And it's amazing how once you get that flywheel going, the ideas that are actually valuable just start coming out of the woodwork. And it's not a laundry list of, well, I can think of a bunch of measures or metrics that I'd like to be able to answer, but really these are the ones that matter that start coming.
Yeah, there's also something that clicks better in someone's mind if they're seeing an example of data that they work with every day, right? So this is my business, even though it's not my area, I recognize these names, I see kind of some of these numbers that are up here. It makes it easier to really think about what do I want? And I think a lot of times, you start to see the more you get that flywheel spinning, the requirements that are coming back from your users are actually more and more fleshed out as you go.
They're smarter, they're more valuable.
Yeah.
It's almost like that first dashboard leads to 3 or 4 smarter dashboards. Mm-hmm. Once people start seeing stuff, we see it over and over, the light bulbs start going off. And it's not just sort of gratuitous dashboards, but like they're really saying, okay, now that I see that, what I really need to see is this.
Exactly. Yep.
And I can start to move the needle for the company. And that really sort of funds the whole effort. Once you start getting that ROI, it's easy, and you start to get adoption and can roll it out across the company. And so in 18 months, actually, now you've maybe moved into 5 or 6 departments, and you do have all of your data in the data lakehouse, and you've connected different data sources so you can answer complex questions and really drive the business. That's how you do it. And I just can't emphasize enough that it's tempting to think, okay, but I want to end up there on day one. You can get there pretty quickly. You can have all your data loaded in 3 or 4 months, and And in many cases you probably should, but be careful about going down a path that's delivering ROI the whole time. And do it at a speed where the company is actually digesting it and adopting it and getting it and spinning that flywheel.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I think that's all I wanted to cover today. So, again, it's the big concept is don't boil the ocean. Start with a couple of key questions to really zero in on the most important things that you could report on. Get those done quickly. Don't make it a 6-month project. Don't even make it a 4-month project. There's some cases where you might have some super valuable data and reporting that is going to take 3 or 4 months, but for your first one, try to find something maybe that's a little less valuable or just as valuable, but you can do in that first 30 or 45 days, something like that. That's how you get to success.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
All right. Well, appreciate the discussion. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
All right.